All right, guys, we got to dive in on Dynasty. I'm going to dive through this article, Robbie Cowan's Dynasty details here. I'm happy to report, Robbie Cowan states, that Dynasty Mode remains the EA Sports college football mode that the game is built around. As principal game designer Ben Homeler, who was part of the team that built NCAA football from '05 to 14, stated in his presentation, Dynasty is what we're about. Another developer told me he felt Dynasty was where the majority of their focus had been as they put the game together, and they made sure the mode was built out as best as possible. Amazing news. Me personally, that's the mode I play the most, both offline and online. So this shit right here is what makes me the most excited. For those that were worried Ultimate Team Build would take the center stage, it and Team Builder not even get noted in the 2-hour presentation, proving Dynasty is indeed what they're about. We got a chance to see visuals of the recruiting and the transfer portal process, along with details about what is and isn't a part of the game. So here's the basics, guys. Go 30 years. You can have 30-year Dynasty, and in online Dynasty, you can have up to 32 user-controlled teams. Of course, you can do that in offline as well. The online Dynasty mode will not be available for crossplay. Obviously, you're going to play on the same console. There is crossplay for ranked online and for the Road to the College Football Playoff mode. They also brought back the ability to start your career as an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator as well as a head coach. Awesome. That's something we were hoping for, right, guys, was getting that ability. That's cool. I like to have a dynasty where I start off as an offensive coordinator and try and work my way up to head coach. The word they really harped on while making with Dynasty was making it the sandbox, where gamers have the chance to make of it what they want. They seem to be delivering on that promise at just about every level. Custom conferences. Custom conferences are back. I know you guys were wanting some details about this, but with more depth than ever before. Not only can you move teams around, but you can change conference rules and create custom protected opponents. That means if you want the SEC to go to 9 conference games each season, with the conference championship game being played at the top-ranked team's home stadium rather than neutral site, you can make that change. And then, of course, custom schedules. Custom schedules are back, but your conference games are locked in on your schedule and cannot move around. But there's good reason for that because they actually have everyone's conference schedule up into the future. So if you play Dynasty up until the 2030s, it's going to be your actual conference matchups, how they're supposed to be. Of course, that may change if conference realignment happens anytime soon, but for now, they have that set, which is pretty cool. They also went deeper to ensure annual matchups fall on the correct date, so rivalry is going to be on the week they're played every year in real life. The schedules will also feature every non-conference game already agreed to, which means games we laugh about being scheduled in 2032 will be in the game when you get to that point of your dynasty. Week 0 is now a new feature, new to the dynasty mode as well. Do not have licensing for the stadium in Dublin, Ireland, so games scheduled there will be at a different neutral site location in the game. Kickoff games are part of the game and are licensed, but will be scheduled by the CPU, so you cannot put UMass and the Duke's Mayo kickoff, sadly. Team Builder. You'll be able to import teams you create from Team Builder website into Dynasty mode and play as the school you created. You can design uniforms, helmets, and fields to import into the game, and you'll be able to download created schools made by others if you want a custom option but aren't big into graphic design. Full details on Team Builder will be arriving later this summer. Coaching. All right, skill trees, guys. Here we are. We do got this back. We know we got the ability to start, but they're a little bit different than they were in 14. Skill trees and archetypes. When building out your coach, you will select one of 3 archetypes. You can be a motivator, you can be a recruiter, or you can be a tactician. That's interesting, and I'm kind of wondering how I'm going to figure that up because I like recruiting, but I also like the tactician side. I think that's really cool as well. The scheming of things up and all that. So I'm going to have to debate between those two personally, I think. We'll just have to see, because also when they break down which comes with each, strength and weakness and all that, that may help me make the decision also. 11 skill trees each coach will gain attributes in. You'll not be able to max out all of your skill trees in this version of the game. It's a departure from 14 where you'd max out your recruiting and then go on to max out your game management skills. So pretty much probably, I'm guessing, similar to Road to Glory. You kind of have to select where you want to focus. Instead, you have to figure out what's most important to you and build your coaching accordingly, getting boosts in some areas but having weaknesses in others. The goal of the game at every level is to make sure the decisions you make matter and have lasting impact. Coaching carousel is back. Awesome. Staff hiring and firing, and you'll get offers based on your reputation and performance, both as a coordinator and head coach. A new wrinkle that many fans have wanted, and this is exciting shit right here, guys, is the ability to hire and fire members of your staff. In the past, you had the coaching carousel going, and sometimes your coordinators would leave, but you wouldn't get to select the replacements. That was automatically filled in. Now you got that. That's awesome. Your coordinators will also have skill trees, which means you can choose to have coordinators that fill in gaps in your skill tree as a head coach, giving you balance but not the big boost. Or you can hire like like-minded coaches that will unlock the highest level boosts in those areas. You'll be able to fire members of your staff and go into the coaching carousel and either try to poach coaches from other schools. That's awesome. Or hire from a pool of free agent coaches. However, each coach will have a talent tree of players, which you'll be able to look at, that are attached to them from either the recruiting process or playing for them. As such, if you fire a guy, just like in real life, you might lose some of those guys to the transfer portal. That's cool though, because that also makes me wonder if I see some guys that are tied to a certain coach and I want to go, maybe I'll see a recruit. I want, oh, if I hired this coordinator, I can maybe get that guy to transfer here too. So it can affect you negatively or positively. Recruiting and the transfer portal. The basics. Each year will feature 4,000 prospects, 32 five-star recruits only. So that makes it really high competition, especially in your online dynasty for those five-star guys. Only 32 five-star recruits, right? And if you have 32 team online dynasties, that's, the equivalent of one per each team. But if you have 32, obviously somebody might get multiple. So somebody's not getting any five-star recruits and shit. That's interesting. And that's strategically thought out. That number of 32 isn't by accident. Pitch grades also return with 14 in total, including proximity to home, player playing time, sending players to the NFL, and brand exposure, which brand exposure is kind of how they replace the NIL and Dynasty. And many recruits will have deal breakers where they won't consider your school if you don't meet their required grade in certain areas. Athletes are back and can play 2 or 3 positions, and it will let you know what your team needs and positional needs are in the recruiting screen, as well as which players are at risk of transfer. The transfer portal is also part of the same screen, but won't open until the off season. More on that in a bit. So it seems like they actually have the transfer windows in here, guys. That's cool. It's going to make it realistic. The recruiting process is, as they worded it, a combination of some of their greatest hits, as they felt they rolled it back too far with the points-based system. So those of you that thought the points-based system was too simple and shit, seems like they've done a good job to, mix that system with the previous system. Helmler told me they simply thought that they'd fix that next year and then had to wait 11 years for the chance. So they did think they pushed it back, as some people complained it made it too simple when they were planning on NCAA Football 15 fixing it. Never had the opportunity. Now they finally do. So here's a little bit of the detail here. There's a good bit more recruiting detail than compared to 14, as you'll have to assign hours to recruits. In the offseason, your recruiting hours and transfer portal hours will be one and the same. Once again, forcing to make your decisions on how you focus. I like that. So you don't have transfer portal hours and high school recruiting hours. You just have recruiting hours, and they go to both. And you have to decide which one you want to go focus on more, transfer portal or high school. I like that shit. I love how this game is making you make decisions that are going to make effect, in Dynasty and in Road to Glory too. This is awesome, guys. You'll need to be cognizant of leaving roster spots open for portal guys, because you only have a certain amount of scholarships and stuff. The early signing period also makes its debut in the game with the portal opening after early signing day. That's cool, because you remember the last time this game was around, we didn't have that early signing period in December, which is where pretty much all the high school recruits sign now. Now they do, so you'll have that, and then you'll have the portal opening. The recruiting process happens in stages, as will scouting. Gone is the ability to get a full scout on a guy in 1 week, as you won't be able to get a guy's skill tree until you bring him in on an official visit. So you got to get a guy in on a visit before you learn about all of his skills and you have him fully scouted. I like that addition too. You have to stay above a cut line through the process, going from recruit locking in his top 10 to top 8 to top 5 and then a top 3. You'll divide your allotment of recruiting hours across your recruiting board. The hours we saw on the screen were 55, but I don't have it confirmed if your recruiting hours to spend are dependent on your staff skills tree or not. So that could vary. Players will again have things that are important to them, with the 14 pitch grades, and those will impact how interested they are in your school. There will no longer be a way to manipulate recruiting logic to pull in guys that were interested in you by throwing points to them. If they have value proximity to home and live in California, you're not going to be able to get them to come to the East Coast, basically. Within that, it will be much harder to rapidly build a smaller program into a national contender. No longer will you spend 1 year with a small school and then bring in 4 and 5 stars like 14. These top recruits will not consider your school and have you locked out with deal breakers early on. Instead, you're going to have to build up the program over years, building up those pitch grades. You'll be able to hop in, land top tier talent, both in the portal and recruiting years down the line. And let's talk a little bit about visits now. Once a player locks in his top 5, you'll be able to bring him in on a visit, and you will once again be able to design a recruit's visit to show him the things that matter to him, or hide the things not highly regarded in. What game you bring in, what game you bring someone to will also matter, with the game's outcome, win or loss, impacting how well the visit goes. For example, if you bring a recruit to a game against number 2 Ohio State, we will be a lot closer to signing him than if you bring him to UL Monroe and win. On the flip side, a loss to a highly ranked team won't hurt you as much, but losing to a lesser school will take your chances. Complimentary and competitive visits are back, meaning bringing 3 quarterbacks will not go very well. We know how that works. Let's talk a little bit about the portal here. New addition to this game. Wanted to hear about this shit. The portal opens after the early signing period and will be a part of the offseason process. So it's a shortened process compared to high school recruiting. So I do kind of like that. You don't have to recruit both throughout the season, but you do have to keep in mind that this is coming up and you will have, certain scholarships to leave, to allocate certain hours, all of that. The portal section is a tab so you can toggle from the recruiting page using L1R1. Service academies can use the portal unlike in real life, as can Clemson, which Davo won't like. You will also have to manage your off-season recruiting hours for both the portal and the remainder of your high school recruiting. Like in real life, players you were close to landing in high school recruiting will remember that when they enter the portal, and you were likely end up as one of the preferred destinations. So that's cool that they have that tied into the AI. Even if you came close to landing a guy, but he went somewhere else, keep that guy in mind, because if he hits the portal in a couple of years, you're going to be up on his list and shit. So that's cool. So just because you lose out on a guy initially, you might get him down the road in your dynasty. You can also encourage your own players to enter the portal to clear up your roster. And that's big because we know, obviously, we have bigger rosters this year. At least they're moving it from 70 to 85 because that 70 shit used to piss me off. You'd have to cut some good players sometimes. But now, not only can you do that and have the 85-man roster, but you can ask some guys to leave. I need some scholarship space for some of these transfers. You're a low high school recruit. You're not going to play here. That's cool. They're also bringing back the step of trying to persuade players not to go to the NFL or go to the transfer portal. So that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Shaquille. You will have the ability to convince them at least. And then players will enter the portal based on a number of factors, most notably how you're doing and holding up your end of the bargain with their deal breakers. For example, if you land a recruit based off playing time, he doesn't play at a freshman, he's at risk to enter the portal. Throughout the year, we'll let you know who's at risk for the portal, and it'll be up to you whether you make adjustments to keep those guys or continue the same play and be like, I can afford to lose that guy. And then NIL. NIL is not in dynasty mode, and there's pretty good reason for that. When developing the game, NIL was done by the collectives and wasn't something coaches and schools controlled. Beyond that, given how quickly things have changed with NIL, they didn't want to put something in the game that was outdated as quickly as it was built. So in the future, NIL will likely make its way in once it's something that's solid for schools to do, which we now know that court case came, revenue sharing is coming. So by NCAA football, shit, it's going to take a while for me to get used to not fucking saying that. By college football 26, it may be in there because they may have a way to put it in and kind of have it solidified. And then player editing. This is something we were all wondering about because with the inclusion of new players, we were wondering if that meant, sorry, my dog's barking. My wife may be pulling up outside and make sure she's not calling me or anything. But we were wondering, would you be able to edit real players? And it appears like you won't be able to edit their ratings at all. But you won't be able to create players, that opted out of the game. We already knew that. But any created players you will be able to edit. Very limited what you can do in terms of edited players because of, NIL and stuff. There are actually guys on the roster. You might be able to make adjustments beyond team builder mode. Small price to pay to have them back in the game, back with the actual players in it. Let's talk a little bit about Dynasty continuing on here. We're talking rivalry games, trophies, awards, and records. Rivalry games are in the game with the appropriate name at every level. For example, Georgia State, Georgia Southern is in the game as modern day hate. If your rivalry game has a trophy, that trophy's in the game, and they probably did a motion capture session of players celebrating with a wooden model of that trophy. So not only will you have the rivalry games, you'll have the trophy celebrations. You'll be able to fill your trophy case and take a look and take down rivalry schools. Records are also back at the school conference and national level as are awards. So it sounds like we'll have, be able to keep up with all our statistics, our history, all of that good stuff. Takeaways. My biggest takeaway from the presentation talking with developers EA was that Dynasty will be what fans have wanted it to be. Now, that doesn't mean it will have everything folks have ever wanted and it won't have some flaws to tweak going forward. But after spending 11 years ideating on what a modern Dynasty could be, I do believe they created something cool, something that will be really enjoyable. What they've done with recruiting looks very cool, and I guess there will be more to learn as we get closer to launch about how everything works, and we just got a high-level look at the process. One of the things I'm most interested in is seeing how long it takes to build a program in this game. It used to be you could turn just about any program around it to be a contender in 2 years. From everything we saw and everything I've heard from people in the building, that won't be the case in this game. Don't know if that means it's going to be a 4-year job, a 7-year job, or whatever. Probably depends on your skills as a gamer as well. But excited to get in there and find out. It's truly going to be a process of building a program, not only having early issues in recruiting in the portal, but on the field where gameplay changes that make it difficult to thrive with lesser players. So there we are, guys. We've deep dive gameplay, Road to Glory, and Dynasty.